makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
A number of liberal pundits are having a complete, utter meltdown over the school closures that are taking place in the US as a result of the surge in Omicron. And this is a delight to see. Now, a lot of the reaction against school closures has been on the Republican side. Obviously, we all know that Republicans don't really like their children and would rather they be away from them as much as possible. Having said that, I am not entirely unsympathetic to the idea that uh, closing schools has a lot of impact on both children and parents, especially mothers. There is a case to be made that um, it increases a lot of the workload for mothers who, on top of possibly working from home, now have to take care of their kids, etc. So, I am not unsympathetic to this. I do think there should be a debate about whether a variant like Omicron, which is perhaps mild enough that we can not be as paranoid over it as some of the previous variants. I do think we can have that discussion. I do think we can have that debate. And I do think that a good faith debate about this could be quite productive and perhaps, reach some sort of compromise. Now, asking for that kind of good faith argument in 2022 on Twitter or on traditional media channels is really pushing it. And so I'm just going to show you some of the more egregious cases of just awful arguments against school closures that you will see. And the first comes from Nate Silver. And Nate Silver is uh, something, I think I once saw a comment sort of like, 538 is like astrology for liberal centrist. This guy was basically worshipped by liberal centrists ever since he, uh, you know, predicted Obama's victory in 2014, which I don't see what was so groundbreaking about that prediction. I should add he completely failed to predict Trump's victory in 2016. So that is that. But anyway, he's been a sort of icon for a lot of liberal centrists because liberal centrists are obsessed with appearing rational and statistics based, and they're full of shit. But anyway, so here's a discussion that Nate had with Clara Jeffrey, who is an editor of Mother Jones, editor in chief. So, a lot of liberal pundit handwriting to the effect of we can close schools now that we know of the great harms to kids' mental health. Which, yes, but CTU maybe aside, is anyone pushing closures that aren't solely prompted by staff shortages due to their own infections? Like, pundits seem to be fighting the last war, except SFUSD. They've been mostly back for a year, and even SFUSD isn't headed towards indefinite closures. I suppose that is a school district, San Francisco, I guess. I don't know. Nate Silver responds. Suppose you think that school closures were a disastrous invasion of Iraq magnitude or perhaps greater policy decision. Shouldn't that merit some further reflection? So let's start, remember, this is like the rational guy, the guy that every liberal centrist worships because he's so fact-based, rational, evidence-based, all these words that they love to use. And he starts with committing the most egregious sin that at least in my profession, economics, an economist can commit, and that is start with an assumption that is just completely not based on reality in any way. So suppose you think that school closures were a disastrous invasion of Iraq magnitude. How on earth can you compare the disruption to school for, admittedly a year or more, to the destruction of a country over the space of an entire decade, of more than a decade? How is this comparable? How is like the almost half million Iraqi civilians killed? God knows how many Iraqi children killed or orphaned. God knows how many schools bombed, destroyed. What about the destruction of their education? How is this in any way comparable? How is this dipshit even making, like, of all the ways that he can make and construct an analogy of this, he chooses the Iraq War, like one of the single most disastrous political decisions made by any country in the last 20 in this whole century. He's comparing it to that. You gotta be fucking kidding me. You gotta be fucking kidding me. So off the bat, the answer would be no, because guess what? It isn't by any stretch of the imagination a disastrous invasion of Iraq magnitude policy decision. So by that own line of argument, then no, it doesn't deserve further reflection. She responds, do you think this was a policy decision equivalent to the deaths of 46,000 people, 460,000 people, and the destabilizing of an entire region? And do you think parents and educators have not been reflecting, for fuck's sake? Yeah, I think depriving tens of millions of school children of an in-person education for a year or longer is absolutely on that magnitude. No question. What the fuck? What the fuck? Does this guy just wake up one day and decide, I'm just going to be the most obnoxious dipshit on Twitter just because I'm Nate fucking Silver? What is wrong with these people? Seriously, what is wrong? I really want to know. Like, how do their brains operate? How do they live with themselves, knowing that they can make such a bad fucking take on social media and seemingly have no repercussions whatsoever? This guy will still sell 1 million books tomorrow. What the hell is wrong with this guy? Seriously. A lot is wrong with this guy. But anyway, I mean, just for starters, we're accepting SFUSD where kids kept out of school for a year. Please account for the tens of millions. And often it was their own parents pushing for remote, at least remote options, until vaccinations were available. There are about 50 million school children and 20 million college students in the US. They experience a spectrum of disruption from modest to severe. The amount of learning loss was extremely large. I think all of this can be made up. Losing your parents to COVID or your grandparents or whatever, you can't. Getting perhaps long COVID, which does affect a lot of young people who catch it. We don't know what the effects are. So yeah, it is a fucking risk as well to not to go to school when you have an active pandemic going on around you. I guess you can say, well, it was worth it because we prevented some number of COVID cases. Or you can say we operated under the fog of uncertainty, and sometimes people fuck up under those circumstances. Like Iraq, perhaps? Is that what he's suggesting? But these were very high stakes, high magnitude decisions. Here's what this asshole is trying to do here. And again, this is what I hate so much about liberal centrists. This is him sort of playing the rational decision here was to make a cost benefit analysis. But here's the thing. You don't know the actual cost. You don't. This is all hypothetical. You don't actually know what the cost of children not going to school for a year or whatever. We don't know. And guess what? It might actually not be that bad. Because they can make up whatever losses they had in terms of education. It's not like they're doomed. It's not like we will never see a Nobel Prize winner come from this cohort of children who were affected by COVID. Give me a fucking break. Yeah, I can't stand this guy. I absolutely can't stand this guy, and I absolutely cannot stand fucking liberal centrists who worship people like him. I hate this fucking attitude of, I'm so rational, I'm so evidence-based. Let's do cost-benefit analysis. And everyone else is irrational if they don't reach the same conclusion I did by completely imagining the cost of something and comparing it to the fucking Iraq war. Jesus Christ, what a fucking idiot. As you can tell, I'm pretty mad today. Now let's move on to other media outlets. And this is Joe fucking Scarborough, who is complaining that Chicago teachers voted to switch to remote learning amid Omicron surge. So just look at this absolutely deplorable argument that he gives.
If you don't want to teach, don't teach.
Yeah.
Quit. Just stay at home and stop teaching children, okay? Because when you set up that barrier to getting back to class, when healthcare officials say that you can still be testing positive 30 days after, well, you obviously, if that's your standard, you're either ignorant when it comes to science, or you just don't want to be in classes. And if you don't want to be in classes, that's fine. Listen, thank you for your service to our children. Now go get another job.
So in response to the...
Can I just point out now that they're all working remotely? All the staff of all these news outlets, they're all being shown, they're all working remotely. They're not in the studio. So this is what I find so absolutely hypocritical about all these pundits on MSNBC, CNN, and of course Fox, because they've been complaining about schools for ages, that they are in their shelters, like the Tucker Carlson's little log cabin studio in Maine, so he doesn't get exposed to the virus, and Joe Scarborough also won't get exposed to the virus. But screw you, working class parents who will have to deal with their kids going to schools in potentially unsafe transmission environments and possibly catching the bug as well. Now, I'll repeat what I said at the beginning of the video. I do think that we can have a good faith discussion on the merits of school closures. I do think that a temporary cancellation of classes that isn't meant to be anything permanent until COVID. The good thing about Omicron is that cases spike really high, really quickly. But as South Africa shows, it then goes down also very quickly. So it burns itself out pretty damn quickly. So I don't think that this is going to be, the story of the next 6 months. It's going to be the story of January and possibly part of February. So having a month of remote learning until cases go down, I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think this is, an Iraq war magnitude decision, as Nate idiot fuckface Silver thinks so. So why all this uproar? Why? I don't get it. And worse, this like, oh, well, if you don't like in-person teaching, you should quit. Are you kidding me? Teachers still have a fuckload of administrative work to do, grading tests, stuff like that they have to do at home just as much as they have to do it in school. So this isn't like a huge reduction in workload. And come on, like if it sets back students for a bit, they will be able to make it up. All this is being able to be made up at some point. All the kids who were orphaned from COVID, they can't make that up anymore. So I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't think anyone is suggesting that these school closures are permanent. I don't think anyone has been saying that this needs to go on for another year. But holy shit, the reaction from the liberal pundit class is just outrageous. So I'm really wondering if they hate their children as much as Republicans hate their children, which I wouldn't be surprised at all. But yeah, like I said, I wish there was better ways of having a necessary conversation using facts, hearing both sides. But people like Scarborough just basically, oh, unionized teachers, you're trash. That's really what he's kind of suggesting. And, well, Nate Silver apparently thinks that a little Iraq war is going on in the US. Okay. So, yeah, on that note, if you like this video, please like, please share. Most importantly, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.